I think we're getting everybody's cameras turned on. I'd like to welcome everybody to this session. We have a wonderful panel today. I'm going to do a brief introduction of all of our panelists here in a minute, but I want to, number one, thank all of you for participating in CSRI this year. I know all of us were very disappointed in last year's conference not being able to be held. And this year I have to especially thank not only Richard Southall, who has still had the vision and the drive to make this happen, but Kim Boone has done amazing work for us, where she has worked essentially nonstop the last few months, planning, figuring out what could we do, how would we logistically handle everything. And so I wanted to make sure that we thanked Kim, especially. She can't be thanked enough for all the work that she did, learning a number of things that she probably never thought would be part of her job description. So thank you all for coming today. We have a great panel. We want to talk a little bit about, for the next hour and a half, about profit athletes, and those would be the athletes in, essentially men's basketball and football, and their role as employees and their perception as employees. And so I have a number of great panelists today. Ellen Starowski, a prominent author, educator in sport management. Mo Brown, I don't know how I describe you, Mo, prominent business person, ran for Congress, involved in a number of different things. Aaron Lucas, basketball legend, played professional sports overseas, has been involved as an educator, has been involved as a business person. And then Christian Kinsley, who's the youngest of us. Christian was on the South Carolina Gamecock football team this year. He's also a graduate student in the Sport Entertainment Management program at the University of South Carolina. And something we might actually come up and talk about later is will he use his extra year of eligibility, or will he get on with some other things that he's got ideas for pursuing business in the future. So thank you all for being here. Ellen, I was hoping we could start with you. And I know this question I'm going to ask is one you could probably do 45 minutes on. So maybe if you could hit the highlights. Historically, what are the things that people need to know historically about football players and college basketball players as employees, or the view of them as employees, or how the industry has attempted to make sure they're not viewed as employees?
Well, thank you, Mark, and thank you to CSRI for continuing to do this incredible work, and to Dr. Southall and to Kim as well for all of the good work that she's done in supporting us with this. I'd also really like to just say how honored I feel to be on the panel with my colleagues here. So this is really an opportunity of a lifetime for me. So thank you so much for this. I have been given the task. Mark says that you could teach this in 45 minutes. You could actually teach it in 4 years. But I'm excited because what we're going to do is we're going to do the 4-minute drill in terms of the big things that you need to know. We're going to start off in the early 1900s. We're going to start off with the father of American football, Walter Camp. Coached at Yale, was instrumental in many of the entire rule structure that we continue to unpack today. But what Walter Camp knew how to tell a story, and he also knew something about entrepreneurship and business. And what that left us with is a script that we're living with today, which is that the story he was telling was the one about athletes doing this just for the love of the game and for virtue and honor. And what he was doing in the entrepreneurial area is he actually had a slush fund to pay players. So on one hand, he was writing books and saying that it was not honorable to receive pay to play. And then on the other hand, he was making sure that his marquee players were getting paid. And alas, that script has kept us going now for 120 years. Fast forwarding to the 1930s, significantly, we have the National Labor Relations Act that gets passed in 1935, a law that is intended to protect the rights of employees, especially in terms of the inequities around bargaining power and around health and safety, around wages, and around work conditions. And so it's not surprising that football players at the University of Pittsburgh are agitating on campus for pay when they realize that the school has received $100,000 from their Rose Bowl appearance, and the players as a team got $250 out of that deal. And of course, along the way, what the college sport officials were doing is they were shutting down dissent. So as these football players came forward and were attempting to gain equity, the rule structure was being put into place to repress them along the way. And then we get to 1950s with the passage of the grant and aid, or otherwise more colloquially known as the athletic scholarship. Again, the NCAA officials well knew that they had created a pay-for-play system. The University of Michigan athletic director at that time actually made the statement that that what the colleges were doing is they were reserving the right to professionalize athletes for themselves. And that's almost a direct quote from Walter Byers' book. And what we have shortly thereafter is we have a football player who passes away as a result of a severe injury. His family seeks benefits, death benefits as a result of that. And there are a number of other players who also sought workers' compensation during that time period. The NCAA responded by creating the term student athlete. They went about the task of creating the term student athlete with the purpose of creating a deflection. And what an incredible propaganda campaign it has been. And moving fast forward into the early 1960s and early 1970s, at a time when we are beginning to see integration in colleges and universities, and at a time when we have athletes who are protesting on campuses, trying to gain their rights again, the NCAA responds with 3 rules within a period of 4 years. One of them is the fraudulent misrepresentation rule, which explains the reason why athletes are afraid to speak up. This is a rule that says that if you don't go to practice, that you can automatically have your scholarship removed. The misconduct rule provides a lot of latitude in terms of disciplining players. And then we have the 1-year scholarship rule, which was passed in 1973. But it's notable that in the height of Black athlete protests in the 1960s, the NCAA put in rules expressly designed to suppress dissent. Moving forward, keeping in mind that I'm almost breathless and out of oxygen, in 2014, I'm kidding, I could go on forever. But for 2014, of course, we have the moment that people just kept saying wouldn't happen. We have Northwestern under the leadership of Kane Colder and Ramogi Huma from the National College Players Association, where the thing that couldn't happen happened, where Northwestern football players signed union cards. We end up with Peter Sung-Ur, the regional NLRB director, who supports that and who says that according to the NLRA, the players are absolutely correct. That case eventually goes on appeal, and effectively the National Labor Relations Board effectively kicks the can down the road. They actually don't ever say that the athletes were not right, or that the athletes were not employees, but they say that because it was one school, that they couldn't deal with the situation. And here we are today with so many different things percolating just from last Friday to the present. But that's a little aerial view of what we're talking about. And all of this is about labor.
And I appreciate you condensing what is quite an extensive topic. And I wanted to give you a second to catch your breath. I did want to ask one quick follow-up. You've spent a lot of time in the NCAA archives. Yeah. Were there people within the enterprise, whether that be athletic directors, school presidents, that whether it be 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, was there any presidents, any athletic directors that said, hey, we have a system here that might be wrong? And obviously Walter Byers in hindsight wrote that he kind of knew what he was doing from a tax perspective, but was there any kind of forceful debate, or was it pretty much accepted that the industry needs this to happen for any number of reasons, and so we're all kind of just going to go along?
Yeah, I appreciate the question, and I'll keep this brief. And I do find it interesting that, that as the sun moves along, the light is changing on my screen here. So hopefully that's not too distracting. But it's interesting. I'll just talk about due process for a second. When we were looking through the archives with due process legislation, it was really striking that that even due process rules that were being considered, like the original language, um, uh, NCAA officials and other committee appointees would come in and would actually cross out language that would have ensured that athletes had much better due process rights. And that's the thing I think that's been so striking, is that throughout this entire history, at every opportunity when the NCAA had the opportunity to do the right thing by players, that they have not taken that route, that they have always gone in the other direction. And even, Mark, if we look at what was happening last Friday, we've got March Madness going on. We have players on the court in a COVID environment, generating revenue for the NCAA. And what's the NCAA doing on March 19th? They're filing a response at the Supreme Court in terms of fighting athletes, and not only fighting athletes, but using the revenue that they are generating in March Madness to help fund the effort to fight them at the Supreme Court level. And this has been a hallmark of this entity from the beginning until the present.
Certainly. Thank you, Ellen. Appreciate it. I have other questions I want to come back to, but Mo, I want to go to you, and you played on some great football teams here, and kind of the glory days of the early 2010s, so to speak. Did you and any of your teammates think a lot about, are we students? Are we athletes? Are we employees? What was some of the thought process that you and some of your teammates may have had regarding some of these issues?
Well, first off, thanks for having me. And Ms. Ellen, that was a great synopsis of where we're at right now. And kudos to you to be able to condense that to 5 minutes. I would have talked for an hour and a half if I'd had all the information you did. But to answer your question, absolutely. And it was in every phase of our student athlete experience. It would come to your face. Coming in as young Black male from Belton, South Carolina. I was in the business school, and my then the person who was over academics looked at my schedule that was pre-business, that would have put me in a business school, and said, "This is pretty much too difficult for you," and made me undeclared. Those one of those moments where you kind of just, the athlete student part. Can you really be a student? You're here to be an athlete, and so yeah, you got this difficult curriculum. I don't know if you can take it on. Let's make you undeclared. And I think I got music appreciation that was a substitute or something like that. And then in addition to that, when we go to fall camp every year, Coach Spurrier would address the team first, and then followed by that was the compliance team would come in, and we would have a packet of different things that we had to sign, essentially signing all our rights away. And I remember for every 4 years reading over these documents as they was going through it, kind of nonchalantly saying, you sign here, sign there, sign here. I'm like, yo, I don't know if I feel comfortable with signing this stuff. So you're telling me you can make money off me, but I can't make money off myself. But at the same time, you have to sign it, because what's the alternative? Not sign it, be put on the sideline or seen as someone being a troublemaker, and your coaches, who are determinative of your playing time, saying you got to process all these things. So even the objection that you do have, you internalize more so than anything, because your goal is to be on the field at all costs. And when you have such highly competitive competition, when it comes to the people that you're trying to get on the field for, you end up making decisions that's going to keep you in the best light in order to get on the field. So those are just a couple of examples. There's others. My senior year, I had the jersey 9. I was number 9, was being printed by Under Armour. Obviously, it didn't have the name of my name on the back, because you couldn't do that. And so without having my name on the back of it, it was just a generic number. Thus, it's not the likeness of Mo Brown, even though I wore the number. I was a, off and on 4-year starter. I was the captain of the football team, and you so happened to pick the number 9 that you wasn't producing the year before. never saw any benefits of that. So it was a constant thing within our conversation with student athletes ourselves, but it really never rose to the attention of the administrators because you're just too afraid to really hurt yourself on the field.
Certainly. Aaron, you played basketball here. Did you have similar observations as you were going through your career and with your teammates about the enterprise and kind of some of the bigger things beyond just I need to show up to practice at a certain time?
I think, first of all, thank you for having me as well. It's definitely a pleasure to be here to, express some of my, opinions and thoughts amongst the panel. So, me personally, I didn't think about it until a similar experience to what Mo had, where, my interest was to enroll in the Darla Moore School of Business. I had all these goals and dreams academically of what I wanted to do, and we were stuck in liberal arts. And from my notion, it was liberal arts until your junior year. And my father, who was very strict as far as what I needed to be accomplishing in college and making sure I had enough credits, because I wanted a car my junior year, and that was part of the deal with him. So, for me, it didn't sit well, because I realized, going into my junior year, if I'm starting into my major, it's likely based on our schedule that I won't complete it within that year and a half. If you're looking at the schedule, and it would essentially take 5 years to get what we needed to get done as athletes. So as a member and a representative of the Student Athletic Advisory Committee, we had a meeting with the president and, some board members, and I brought that up. I didn't feel like that was a good position to put athletes in, because, again, at the end of the day, we're here as student athletes, as it's always presented to us, in that we're there to earn our degrees as well as play athletics. So, seeing that many of us weren't going to complete our degrees and finish our majors within that 4-year time span, that was really something that was a major concern. Now, we're also caught in the conundrum of you have everything at your disposal. You have facilities, you have team gear, you get, a small stipend, when you're on the road, they feed you, you're on scholarship, so your academics are paid for. So for many of us, coming from Columbia, not having much to really work with and understand that, how far this academic part could take me, it was more so, I needed to be here in order to fulfill a dream for myself. And that was to earn a degree, as well as try to have aspirations to play beyond college. So, kind of what Mo was alluding to is, what choice do you have? You either embrace this opportunity and try to fulfill your dreams, or you find yourself back in a, between a rock and a hard place, trying to figure out what you're going to make, during this time. So I think it was a little bit different in the late 90s, early 2000s, just as far as the language and how it was presented to you. And you still hear it to this day, where you have a scholarship, everything is taken care of for you. That is true, but there are many students on campus that have academic scholarships, that have earned music scholarships, that are doing a number of different things, but still have the ability to go out and work. Track athletes have the ability to go make money. Baseball athletes have the ability to earn money. So there are a number of different avenues that, athletes are embracing those opportunities, but your major revenue sports don't. And obviously the words major revenue kind of sticks out when we're talking about this in context.
I'm wondering, Aaron, if you could talk a little bit more. It sounds like when you would come in as an athlete, that the default setting was, okay, we're going to put you in liberal arts, or we're going to steer you. Was there ever any discussion with you, give and take, finding out what you're interested in, how intelligent you are, or is it just the default setting is you go in this major and we kind of just leave you alone and you major in eligibility and you work on the field or you work on the court? Was that ever revisited during your academic career, or does it just kind of go unless you stop it, so to speak?
Well, essentially, you go until you stop it. And I think, and I don't know if I heard you correctly, but you're majoring in staying eligible.
Sure.
I mean, that is the ultimate goal, is to stay eligible and be able to perform. At the same time, your goals, dreams, and aspirations are on the sideline because, that's really of little importance. That does not bring in the revenue. That doesn't ultimately result in wins or losses. It's just a part of the backstory that many athletes don't get to share. Many people, many fans don't really get to appreciate and understand. So, again, it's something that when you come in as a 18-year-old, a 19-year-old, that's the last thing on your mind is understanding the nuances of being an academic student, where all of your knowledge base and everything that you've been presented and everything that you have an understanding is the athletic side. What time I need to be at practice, what your game schedule is, what size gear do you wear, and on the back end is, okay, here's your class schedule. All of that's already laid out, mapped out for you. You don't have really any discussion or conversation in that regard either. Everything is laid out for you. Your job is to perform, be on time, and everything else will take care of itself when it's over. And if you earn a liberal arts degree or criminal justice degree or anything of that nature, then at the end of the day, you suffice what you came here for, and that's to get a degree, regardless of what that degree may say. Again, it goes back to your education is being paid for. You have a great opportunity. At the end of the road, no matter what the degree says, you've got one.
Right. And so then the mission is accomplished from the athletic department perspective, whether that's
from the business side. Absolutely.
Sure, that whether that's of interest to you or of utility in the business career or the career that you want to pursue.
Correct.
It's the
go ahead, Mo.
It's the proverbial checking of the box, right? And you see it over and over and over again. I'm an employed to do this, and the eligibility portion of it is key. Now they start changing a little bit under Spurrier with Raymond Harrison and his approach to it, and the way he really preached it, not only to us as student athletes and really as athlete students, to what, the point that we've been making all here is that to be good on the field, we got to be holistic in our approach, and academics is the most important portion of that, because of the 98% of us who's not going to get opportunity to go pro. And he was diligent about driving that home to Coach Spurrier to the point to where, year 2 or year 3 or 4, when he starts seeing us being on time, us being more thoughtful about what we're doing academically, and then start seeing the success with the GPA rising up and the success on the field, you start seeing more people going into these fields. And me personally, I was intentional about my decision to go to the business school and minor in sports and management as well, because for me, it was understanding finance and how to market myself. And then I'm going to be in sports. But that intellectual thought process was all Mo Brown. It wasn't necessarily given to me. But I would say that group under Raymond Harrison, now Maria Hickman, and her role really starts changing that for the athletic department, to where you do now see people in more difficult majors trying to combat what we've seen prior.
Sure. And I think it's difficult I never want to defend other people, but I know a number of people in the academic athletic services, and they say, my job is eligibility. Mm-hmm. And even sometimes they'll talk, we've had them on previous panels at CSRI where they'll say, I really want to help this player move to a major that maybe they would rather be in or might be more beneficial for them. But, if something screws up there, then I'm on the chopping block, because then person X is no longer eligible. And so therefore I've got to play it safe.
Right.
And it's not so much that that's good, bad, or otherwise. I think people just need to understand that's the way the enterprise functions.
Right.
And we sometimes don't understand that or appreciate that.
Right.
Christian, I wanted to add another element to this, and you played football this year in a very difficult circumstance. And full disclosure, Mo was in one of my classes many years ago, and Christian was in my class this fall. And it was fascinating. Christian and I talked a lot about COVID and the football team, and how the football team, the approach. Can you share a little bit about how, in the lens of, is this a job? Are you an employee? The football team approached the season?
Absolutely. Thanks again for having me as well. Once COVID hit, it was make sure everybody's safe. And then once we all kind of reconvened over the summer, it was never, hey, are we going to play or not? It was, you stepped in the door, day one, we're playing. We're going to do everything that we can to play. We're getting through this season. We're going to take the precautions to make sure that this virus doesn't spread throughout the team. But at the end of the day, we are playing this season. And so a lot of guys definitely reflected on that. And you saw some of the guys decided to opt out. And ultimately, when you sit down and think about the virus and everything, you have to consider what kind of threat it has on you as well as your family. So the guys that opted out, a lot of respect for those guys. But yeah, second we walked in the door, it was, we're playing, we're going to figure out how we're going to get through this season. We're going to take hits, but everybody be ready because we're playing a full 10-game season or whatever it ended up being.
Now, I know you were largely sequestered during the season, to make sure that the virus didn't go through the team. Can you share a little bit about some of the experiences that you had in conversations with other USC athletes? Did they have the same mindset from their team's perspective that we're going for sure and we're going to play? Can you share a little bit about some of the conversations you may have had outside the team?
A lot of other sports didn't think they were going to play, and ultimately a lot of them didn't, especially the fall sports. They sat down and just kind of realized that they weren't going to get to go because the benefit wasn't as high on the back end of them playing as it was for us to play. And so we were very hunkered down. We were in 4-people pods for our weightlifting. We had clusters for everything. We rode, took places together. Those 4 people were who you hung out with. They were your roommates most of the time. You didn't really convene with other teams or anything like that. It definitely got very segmented. You hang out with your 4 people and then you don't go elsewhere. And if you do, it gets reported because we can't afford to have anybody get sick or, lose a game or whatnot.
And I think that's one of the things I noticed having you in my class, as well as having a volleyball player in class, that the approach to football was we have to do everything we can to play. And the approach to volleyball and some of the other sports was, well, we have to do everything we can to make sure it's 100% safe. And that might mean we don't play. And I think that's an interesting dynamic when the revenue is so important. And I think to provide some context, I don't know the exact number, but there was a number thrown around in a couple of meetings I was at that if we didn't play football this year at the University of South Carolina, it was roughly $70 million that was at stake. And then by playing games with no fans, X amount of that loss would come down, obviously. And then the more fans you can add to the equation, the less of the loss that you have. So there's certainly significant money involved when we talk about big time college, profit athletes and big time college profit sports. Ellen, I'm wondering where, as you talk to other athletes, do most athletes recognize this interesting dynamic that they're essentially employees, but not in name, and the way that they're treated and the way that they're approached by their universities and their teams?
Thank you for that question. One of the things that I have noticed over time, and is sort of the benefit of having spent a couple of decades working on this, is the shift that I am seeing among athletes and among athletes at all levels. Even at the Division III level, there are athletes who are beginning to understand in a more nuanced way the power dynamics of what's going on in their environments. But especially with it doesn't take as much coming into a session anymore to persuade or to help athletes understand the dynamics around an employment arrangement. And organically, many more athletes are starting to reach that conclusion before they come and have the conversation. So I think something is beginning to happen here. And frankly, I think some of it is due to social media. I think some of it is educating the mass population and kind of the accumulated effects of what we're seeing around abuse of power. Because The NCAA and major conferences are abusing their power in an unregulated industry. And I think that more and more people are beginning to take note of that. So the combination of all these things, I think, is leading people to understand that this really is an employee relationship, but it's not recognized as one.
Mo, what do you tell people? Because I know they have you actively engaged, and we all, as here at the University of South Carolina, the same as at North Carolina or Kentucky, want to be successful on the athletic field. What do you tell athletes, whether that be recruits or current players? What do you tell them about your experiences and how they should approach this environment that Ellen has just described as employment, but not called employment?
Well, it goes back to my original statement around this. You still got to be tactful. You can push, you could be a disruptor, but understand when you disrupt, you're going to have someone that you're upsetting, and they're capable to respond that way. And so, anytime that you want to take on something as sensitive as this, be thoughtful about your approach. Build coalition and have the right people who are giving you guidance. But the problem is, if you don't have a Mo Brown coming in here saying that to one of these student athletes, it's difficult for them to even understand how to go about that process. Now, with the social media and the more progression and understanding around these topics, it's easier to do now than it was before. But even still, I always caution them to make the best decision, not only just because you feel emotionally about something, because when you move in emotion, you end up finding yourself with emotional response, but being just smart with their tact to address these things. In addition to that, understand that you're always being interviewed. So no matter what you're doing, you're always being seen, you're always being interviewed. And with that Carolina across your chest as a brand ambassador, you're also an ambassador of the name on the back of your jersey as well. And so intertwining those things as best as possible, recognizing the platform you do have to start building on your brand through the relationships that you can build with your professors, with your classmates, your teammates, the fans, the people who you go out into the community and do community service with. Each one of those opportunities can go into building up your own brand. So even when you step outside of your 4 to 5 years here at USC, you can have an opportunity to seize on the platform that you was able to make at USC. So, those are guidance that I try to give, just to be realistic about where we're at. You got to continue to keep pushing, but at the same time, don't put yourself to where you can handicap yourself moving forward.
Aaron, on that note, there was some discussion this year, certainly at Rutgers and some other places with basketball programs, about raising the bar, so to speak, in a protest, sitting out a game or delaying a game. How do you feel about some of those activities as they may become higher on the radar screen, so to speak, in the future? Would that be a mechanism to try to draw more attention and to get some change in the system?
Well, I think that's a method for change in any system where there's I don't want to use the term because it might be too strong. There's a slight system of oppression where, one group of people is being used for whatever gain by another group of people. So when you have that leverage, and I think, it's been addressed already where, the student athletes are the ones that are bringing in the revenue. If they are the ones who people are paying to see, if the fans are tuning in their televisions to see, they have the leverage. And now with education, with advocacy, with these Supreme Court cases that are going in, with obviously with social media playing a big part in educating student athletes, they have the leverage to be able to do that. I was one person who said, in order to make that change, in order for things to change, just don't play. Especially around last summer where it was very volatile with social justice and individuals wanting to make a statement. The statement to me, was not to play. Now, there's a two-headed monster when it comes to that. And I think, that's what Mo was saying. You have to be very tactful and understand the repercussions that may come from that. But at the same time, what's bigger? Is it the cause, or is it, just to make a statement? So, and I've been fortunate to be on both sides of the coin, being in athletic administration, being a former athlete. So I've seen both sides and I understand both sides. But at the same time, again, the student athletes have to understand that they have the leverage, ultimately have the leverage. I can recall when I was working at the university in athletics, having conversations with Mo Brown and Stephon Gilmore and different guys that came through the program that I had an opportunity to meet. And my conversation, because I've come from, their position, not necessarily playing football, but as a student athlete at the university, I understood what was coming. I understood what they were about to go through and what they needed to understand. So what Mo is doing now, again, that was something I was doing almost 10 years ago as an employee, but I was coming from an honest place because I wanted them to have the education, have the information to be able to make those decisions, to be able to understand their position, and for very intelligent, very prepared young people like Mo to have the ability to be tactful, to understand his leverage, to understand that being a captain, being on the football team, being well known in the community, doing the community service, all that became leverage. Networking himself became leverage. So when his voice was heard, or if his voice needed to resonate throughout his team to be able to have these conversations more in depth, he had, again, he built that reputation and built the ability to have, the foundation to be able to tell other players, this is what you can do. This is how you do it. This is the outcome. These are the potential outcomes if you decide to take this route. And again, ultimately, the more education these young people make, or young people have, the more that they understand the repercussions. Even now with the portal, the leverage is more leaning towards the student athletes, right? You saw that probably 10, 15 years ago with Title IX. The leverage starts to go back to the student athletes the more that they have the education. And so, again, I think I'll echo the sentiments of Mo, is you have to be very tactful with the education and the information that you receive, because every move that you make, every statement that you make, obviously in this world where everything can be recorded, everything can be seen, everything can be captured, you have to be very, very, again, tactful. And I hate to keep saying the same term over and over again, but you have to be very, very prepared for what you're trying to embark on.
I'm wondering, Aaron, because you brought up something with the transfer portal. We've seen some, I'll keep it focused more on basketball, where we've seen some coaches that have said openly, hey, the system's not great, the players should be paid. We've seen other coaches that have said the transfer portal, graduate transfers, that goes against everything we're trying to do. And then some cases they'll even say we develop, as if they were talking about a product. We develop the player, and then they can transfer without sitting out, or they can go to a transfer portal. How do you think most coaches, I know you can't necessarily say exactly because you're not, there's 300 plus Division I coaches, 50 plus Power 5 basketball coaches. How do most coaches view this? Do they have that much adamant opposition to having the players be treated as employees and have some ability to get more money? Or where are we with the coaches right now?
Well, I think coaches, and I can only speak in relation to what I do at the high school level, and that's, the concern is still the same because of having the ability to move from district to district, not really being penalized. The attitude is the same. Yeah, you definitely want to embrace young people. You want to educate them. You want to see them reach their fullest potential. But at the same time, in the back of your mind, as a job, as a coach, I have to be very concerned about how I address certain things with this student athlete, how I prepare them, how I train them, not playing them, dealing with the parents. There are so many things that come with it. And I think that's the closest thing that I could relate to as college coaches. They have to, of course, recruit them, bring them in. But at the same time, what I share with young people that are being recruited, the recruiting business never ends. When they're talking to you, they're talking to your replacement the next day. And so the business of winning has become paramount versus the product, right? And if we're using the student athletes in the term of a product, now we're circling back to the problem, and we're looking at them not as human beings that are ultimately here to get an education, to go out and be better people. We're starting to get into that slippery slope of, I need you for me, for my services, for what I do right now, and not what you could ultimately get at the end of the road, because of society says when, and when now.
Right.
Christian, on that note, maybe a little bit different take on it, because you've been on a college campus as a student, and certainly have also been an athlete. Do most of the people on campus, most of the students, would they care if you were to have received more money as an employee, or if you were to not have to take so many classes and could have almost been a part-time student and really focused as a full-time? What's the vibe of students on campus in regards to some of these issues we've discussed?
As a student, I think it's just like viewing us all as the same. They get the opportunity to work, so we don't. So kind of comparing it to, hey, you're working 5 to 8 after classes. I'm getting that time in the morning. So we're doing the same thing. I'm trying to bust my tail just as hard as you are, but nobody really views it any differently as if I take 4 classes or whatnot. But kind of going back to the whole eligibility thing, like we can't take less than 3 classes, or we couldn't. We had to take 5, and we had to pass at least, I think it was 3. So nobody really viewed it any differently. I mean, you walk in the room, and if you're on the football team, people know you're on the football team. And unfortunately, during my time prior to transferring to South Carolina, I transferred in. I tried to not associate myself my freshman and sophomore year with athletics, because there was a negative kind of viewpoint on student athletes, and kind of viewing us as athlete students even before we had a chance to walk into the door and prove ourselves. So from that aspect, that's kind of what we're dealing with of, okay, you are more so prioritizing athletics rather than academics. And so you're already fighting an uphill battle.
Interesting. And I wanted to let everybody who's watching, please, we have a question and answer board. Please send some questions, and I'd be happy to relay some of them to our panelists. We've actually got a question here that someone wrote. Yeah, an earlier panelist on a different panel talked about student athletes selling the idea of college. How do you, as an athlete, I would ask any of the three of you, when you're a current athlete, and part of the recruiting process is there, as Aaron said, they're bringing in your replacement. So you're a sophomore, you're a junior, you're a senior, and now there's a senior in high school coming in for a campus visit. How do you market the student experience? How do you talk to those incoming potential replacements for you about the educational aspect and about the idea of college? I don't know, Mo, maybe you can take that, Soar.
Okay. Yeah. So one on the macro side of it, I would say that yes, student athletes do sell the college experience, particularly in your Power 5 conferences. If you look at success of teams and application rates, they have a direct correlation with each other. So the face of our university is now Shane Beamer. I mean, people will know Shane Beamer, if not now, will know Shane Beamer name more than they will know President Cass. It's just the fact of the matter of it, if you're playing in a Power 5, the face of the university is usually associated with the head coach of the football team. So yes, we do sell the university. As far as the student athletes as they're coming in, I was one of those guys when student athletes would come in or potential recruits come in, I would give them the real. Like, here's the situation. This is how I see the coach. And I know you're going to hear coach talk. I'm not going to tell you to come to USC. I'm going to give you the information and answer your question best possible where you can make an informed decision as you choose your institution, because the next 3 to 5 years of your life is going to set up the next 10 years of your life. And for whatever reason, I understood that at a very young age. And so I was very intentional about, giving those student athletes that information, because I knew how important decision that they're going to make. Now, that being said, I always advocated for our university. You know what I'm saying? I always told them what was up, and we're trying to build something special here. And if you want to have a home here, you're going to have a place to play, but you're going to have to prove yourself once you get here. And so that was my consistent response to those student athletes. For as the education portion of it, I told them my story, particularly as I got into the Dollar School of Business, having to reapply for it after basically losing a year and a half. Be conscious of what you want to do in college, because like Aaron said earlier in the question that you asked, until you really push it and be able to communicate it, and when they come back and have, well, can you handle that curriculum, be able to say it affirmatively that yes, I can, then it wasn't going to be on the table. So be thinking about what you want to do after your college experience, because that's going to be important, particularly if you're playing in the SEC. Because if you raise your hand and ask the SEC players to raise their hands and say, how many of y'all think y'all going to the NFL? You probably have something to the 80 to 90 percentile think that they're going to make it. The reality of it is that only about 2% make it to the NFL if you're playing football, and the 98% focusing on being the athlete student, it's not setting themselves up in a way that's going to make them be successful because of the majors that they may choose, or the intentionality with the networks they're building, the internship opportunities. We haven't really talked about that, how many there's going to be available, because the schedule that you have that can handicap you as you're looking for jobs and down the road. So all those things combined, was the type of information I would try to give to student athletes on that recruiting visit.
This is a question that I'm going to modify a little bit, but you talked about having to take control of your academics because, the system kind of defaults into, here's where you go to this major, you go to this schedule. Mm-hmm. When you would talk to some of those players that were kind of in their sophomore year, their junior year, that had been placed, what would they say about their academic experiences as they were going through?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the guys just will tell you that I got this itinerary. I got my schedule, and these are the classes I was supposed to show up to, and all of them, we know the common classes among the football team. It was African American studies, it was music appreciation, dance appreciation, psychology. You will see, and not taking anything away from any of those majors, but those were the ones that routinely was pitched to guys, and so they would go through the curriculum of going to these schedules and not have a desire or passion to it. Going back to the eligibility portion of it, I got to be eligible, so I got to get to this class. I'm gonna do what I do, and so what you end up what's happening once you graduate. I got this major that I really never invested into. I don't know what to do. I don't even know the proper route to even go seek a job. And so that goes into a cycle, a lot of mental issues that you end up dealing with student athletes as well. So that's what you had to deal with. And that's unfortunate, but that's the reality of it.
Interesting. Aaron, from the basketball side, did you have some of these conversations with some of your teammates that were kind of in the system academically and weren't necessarily fully engaged?
Yeah, I mean, we would certainly have those conversations because, again, at 18, 19, 20 years old, you're still oblivious to the bigger picture. Everybody has the aspirations of being a pro athlete. Like that's the sole mindset. And even then you still don't know what that looks like and how to conduct yourself. Having the pleasure and the honor of, you know, being a co-instructor of a professional seminar, professionalism seminar course now at the university, I have the ability to merge the two of education and athletics, and taking those experiences and having those conversations with my former teammates, to be able to, again, help guys. Again, I use Mo as a reference because we have an extremely good relationship. Being able to leverage that information and understand, again, the game that you're playing within the game, knowing that the track that you're on may not lead to anywhere. If you go back and look at grade point averages, if you look at graduation success rates, it's kind of smoke and mirrors, because if guys are finishing in a major that they have no interest, no concern in, they may be just getting by, but when they're walk across the stage and they're trying to prepare for the real world, they have no idea what they're trying to do. So, you know, it's stuff like that that you have to really look at. You have to digest and dissect, and really, again, have to understand the totality of it. Again, we're going back to talking about people and young people and the impact of their lives. Like Mo said, you know, these 4 years will determine the next 10. So, you know, for me, it's always been to listen, you know, and I was listening then. And that's why, you know, being a part of the Student Athletic Advisory Committee, deciding on my major to be in the hospitality, retail, sport management college, knowing that that was going to give me versatility, knowing that was going to give me an opportunity to hone my skills, to be an athlete more so than going out into the business world. That was one of the main reasons why I chose that major, is because I wanted to be able to articulate myself on television, be able to network and get out in front of people in the event that I was going to get the ultimate opportunity, which was to play in the NBA or play professionally. I wanted to get all of these skills. So a lot of young people, and if any of them are listening now, take that into accord. If you're still trying to be a professional athlete, use your major, use the education, use what you're getting now to expound and expand your skill set. So you're still going to have to interview as a pro athlete. You're still going to have to sit down and talk to an agent and understand contracts. All of these things you can learn once you decide on a major. If you want to be a pro athlete, I would certainly look at the Darla Moore School of Business. I would certainly look at hospitality, retail, sport management. I would certainly look at all of the colleges that are affiliated with being an athlete. But again, this just goes back to education and advocacy. So I try to use my experience talking to my teammates, seeing where many of them are now, understanding my particular story, finishing playing professionally overseas and coming back and having no clue what I wanted to do. But the foundation was already set when I was in college, because I understood while I was in college the impact of what I needed to get done. So again, it's I've been in a very fortunate situation where, I understood what was going on early on in the game. And again, walking past with Mo and other young guys when I was working at the university, I've had an opportunity to express some of those things, not simply, not saying that they didn't know, but just to give them, as Mo said, the real, give them something that this is what you're involved in. It's a little bit bigger than what you understand. It's not a sport, it is a business, and you have to conduct yourself accordingly.
Ellen, I don't want to certainly turn this into much of a tax discussion, because that'll bore half of our audience, if not all of our audience. But I'm wondering if you can explain a little bit, because I think this comes up a lot with students when we talk about this in my business of college sport class, because they'll say, hey, the NFL, the coaches make a lot of money, the players make a lot of money, the teams make a lot of money. NBA is the same thing. And you gave us a nice historical account of the NCAA pushing back against this idea of the players being employees. Who, obviously the NCAA benefits, or the NCAA membership benefits, but who benefits the most by the current system? If we go beyond just this school, this NCAA member and so forth, where does that money that should go, or should stay near the talent, so to speak, where does that money go?
I think, I think we can think about it in a couple of different ways, sort of more locally in terms of the college sport hub, and then expanding out into the sport entertainment industry ecosystem. And, more locally, what you've got is you have a redistribution of money that is going towards select areas within an athletic department. So we have high coach salaries and, great inequities between what players get versus coaches. We've got a lot of excessive spending in terms of facilities in particular. So at a real local level, we've got that kind of thing operating. But then when we begin to expand out, we've got if you just look at the media industry as a case in point, the 24/7 channels that are devoted to college sport are really things that we need to include within this overall understanding of just who is profiting from the labor of football players and men's basketball players and women's basketball players. Because whole industries are built on the labor of these athletes. Whether it's the SEC network, whether it's the multiple channels that ESPN has, most of which are devoted to the coverage of just college sport. Those industries would not exist without the labor that comes from football players and men's and women's basketball players. But that's not all. Whether we're looking at the apparel companies, whether we're looking at the Olympics, so many different, and of course beyond that, we also have all of the corporate sponsors who are largely in that, that Fortune 500, Fortune 100 international range. They're all benefiting tremendously from access to the audience base that players appeal to. So, I'm probably frightening all of you a little bit, just with my enthusiasm for this topic, but I think it's important to understand that the stakes here go so far beyond that $15 billion that we talk about in terms of Division I, which is kind of what we see in the EADA reports. We are talking about billions and billions of dollars that go beyond that initial access point. And if it's all right, if I could just take like 2 more minutes, I promise I'll be short. But to come back to this idea.
It's great. This is great stuff. Keep going.
Well, don't encourage me, Mo. You'll be regretting that day. But this idea of selling the notion of college, it's so powerful. It's so powerful because that's exactly and precisely what this has been about from the 1800s onward. Football and basketball, and especially football initially, and then eventually basketball, they become part of the marketing machine for colleges and universities. And, there's a reason why we have the expression big time college sport, because, it's the contemporary expression comparison to the major leagues. New York City wants major league teams there because of the cachet. Colleges and universities wants big time college sport because of the cachet. But underneath it all, we have this message about education, but we have players who are largely, or a majority of whom are Black and brown, who are being promised degrees in an environment where we know as Americans that African Americans who earn college degrees, typically in terms of generational wealth, realize less generational wealth than high school dropouts. There's a systemic racial issue that's going on here in the economic system that really needs to be understood as well. So thank you for tolerating that additional kind of layer to all of this.
Let me
we're talking big money and big money that is affecting the generational wealth of profit athletes who are being denied the opportunity to realize any meaningful percentage of this.
And Ellen, if you don't mind, I'm sorry, Mark.
Oh, go ahead, Aaron. Yes, go ahead.
This is again where the discussion has to be elevated to find out the benefits of going in direction of pay for play. When we have people such as Ellen being able to articulate that from the standpoint and position that she's in versus the athletes themselves. If we are the majority right now in the major revenue sports, we've been saying this for years, but our voices aren't going to be heard in the same manner in which someone, and again, let's just put it out on the table. When Ellen, as a educated, very knowledgeable Caucasian woman, is able to articulate the voices of the Black and brown athletes that have been trying to voice this same opinion for many, many years, that's where we can all have the conversation and start to make progress. So I certainly appreciate it. And Ellen, if you want to take as much time as you want, continue on, because it's very enlightening, very educational. Again, I know Christian is probably like, oh my gosh, like what's going on right now? But at the same time, he understands it from the perspective that he's currently in versus Mo and myself understand it from the position that we've been in.
Right.
Let me ask you this, Ellen, that dovetails off what Aaron said. Does the typical fan care that much if when they were watching Aaron play or Mo play when they were still playing, or last year when Christian was playing? Does the typical fan care that much if the players were classified as employees? Would they revolt, as the NCAA claims in litigation that they would?
No, I think, again, most fans, I won't say all, but I think most fans have the approach that they're getting an education for free. Their multi-$1,000 education is well worth what they're working for. And again, as Ellen has already mentioned and already discussed, that the degree, when you're coming out of liberal arts or criminal justice, that degree is not going to take you very far. And let's just be frank, a college bachelor's degree now is probably the equivalent to a high school diploma 20-25 years ago. So you still have to, in order to be able to make a living, to be able to earn and be able to live in this modern day society, you need a master's degree, you need a doctorate degree, you need multiple degrees in order to be successful. So just to say you've earned a bachelor's degree now doesn't hold a lot of cachet. It doesn't take you very far unless you've been developed, unless you've understood the position that you've been in and understand how to leverage that once you earn that degree. And that's, again, that's where the conversation lies with fans, is where you're getting a free education. Yeah, but what does that free education do for me when I'm done?
Right.
I still have to go back and get a degree that you pay for, right?
That you pay for.
Right.
Understand
that you go back and you pay for just to be able to elevate and move yourself forward. So again, it's a very deep discussion that I'm very passionate about, and I'm gonna go ahead and mute myself because I can talk for days.
No, that's why we have on the panel. So Ellen, would the majority of fans revolt if in addition to the bargain that we have now, the scholarship that we've discussed, may or may not be actually worth what some people perceive it to be? Would the typical fan say, oh my gosh, Christian Kinsley is now getting paid, he's an employee, I don't want to go to the games? Or, oh my gosh, when Mo was playing or Aaron was playing, I don't want to watch the NCAA tournament, I don't want to watch the Outback Bowl. Has there any evidence of this, that the typical fan cares that deeply about the players not being paid?
There are some surveys that have asked people about, their viewpoints, in terms of paying, that kind of thing. And frankly, it breaks out on racial lines where white people are more, somewhat more inclined to say that it would affect their fandom. African Americans, do not view things that way. But having said that, though, in some ways, I'm even hesitating to introduce that survey conversation because it's so flawed at so many different levels, for so many different reasons. But I do want to be held accountable that I've at least read the stuff, right? But I think, there are a couple of significant tells in the system. Number one, from the 1990s forward, we've had a report out of graduation rates, and for decades, everyone has known that regardless of metric, that players in football and men's basketball, especially African-American players, have lower graduation rates compared to their peers. And that football players and men's basketball players overall have had lower graduation rates. No fan has ever stopped going to a game or watching March Madness on the basis of that data, and that data can be very disturbing, but nobody cares. So that's the tell, number one. Number two, there is no evidence that, there's been no successful study of any sort that would suggest that if we recognize profit athletes as employees, that fans are simply going to stop enjoying football and college football and men's basketball. There's nothing in that. And I think the reason for that is the fact that it really violates all of our basic sensibilities. That 80% of students on college campuses earn a paycheck, almost 80%. So we have the student body where students are employees, and then they are also students. And it's the big lie in terms of higher education. I earned a second master's degree at Drexel in legal studies. I was an employee at the institution, and I got a tuition benefit. I earned a degree. And no one was walking around calling me, an employee law student. It's just made up. It's made up to control the workforce. So for all kinds of reasons, I don't think that this would have any negative effect. And frankly, truth telling has always seemed to me to be something that really benefits industries. If you tell the truth, then there's the opportunity that you can actually elevate everything. So that's my view of it.
Not to get in like political correlation here, but it's really similar. You got folks that's going to follow the leadership. They got the affiliation with the university or a head coach there, however you want to couch it. And as the messaging is coming out, you're going to see a reflection of the temperament of that fan base to reflect that, in my opinion. And so there's nothing going to stop those folks coming to that stadium when you're winning games and having that good atmosphere, because it's not just about watching football, it's the whole experience. And getting a couple coins in your pockets as a player, I don't think is going to prevent any true fan from coming to a game.
Well, I bring that up because I think during the cost of attendance debate, which was basically, hey, should we give the athletes more money? One of the pushbacks was, well, we've kind of sold our fan base on their students, and now if we give them this extra money, the fans may revolt. And yet that didn't stop the flow of viewership or attendance. And I wonder, as we talk about NIL, and that certainly was a different panel, but some of those same arguments keep getting made about why we can't do this. And yet every time those arguments are overcome, the fans just keep coming. So I'm not convinced, even though I'm a moderator, I'm supposed to keep my mouth shut. I'm not convinced the fan cares that much. If Mo, you would have gotten $100 after each game, I think they still would have been more, as you were saying, focused on, are we going to beat Florida?
Right. Absolutely.
I think that's the focus.
Ellen said it perfectly. We just got to be truth tellers. And so we stop finding ourselves in these situations to where we're in confrontation instead of collaboration. I mean, this is a partnership between the student athletes, the university, and the fans, and all down the line, and so it should reflect that. And the notion that somehow one can be abused at the benefits of the other cuts against everything that we see in our society to a certain degree when it comes to business. But when it comes to student athletes, it performs that way. So the truth telling is where it starts. And then once we start telling the truth, finding the solutions is where we got to be all dedicated to. I mean, it's crazy to think that the NCAA is suing again to keep us as student athletes from getting the benefits as due. And you can't ignore the racial implications of that, especially right now in this heightened state of our society and the social change that we're trying to have. So truth telling. I'm glad you said that, because that's what we have to do for sure.
Christian, I want to ask you a question. We've had some good questions here. As a current athlete, and one of the questions is, what about developing an athlete major? What are you and some of your teammates, when you talk about what you're studying or what you're majoring in or what you're not allowed to major in, what are some things that might be helpful for football players, or if we're talking about men's and women's basketball players too? What things might be helpful that you guys are talking about now as current athletes from an academic perspective?
If you know what you want to get into and they tell you to go undecided, but take the core classes that you need. My freshman year, again, I said this, I transferred into South Carolina, and I initially wanted to go in as a pre-med major, and because of my athletic schedule, I wasn't able to do that. Had to change a lot of what I was doing to kind of coincide with our practice schedule, and ended up going into IT, which absolutely no sort of interest in that, but they had boosters' families were teaching IT classes, so it was a lot of kind of just work together with football. These classes were early in the morning. I could get to practice middle of the day. There were no kind of conflicts, but I think it's like what Mo was saying earlier. I mean, you're definitely gonna get told to change your classes and kind of get told to go into a certain group of classes because it's convenient for it. But especially as a freshman, and when you're understanding what you want to do, definitely just take the classes that you think you're interested in and don't necessarily conform early on, because it's going to hurt you so much more in the back end. Transferring to South Carolina, getting into a major that I actually cared about, I had to take a whole year of classes just to be caught up with my classmates. And then I was still behind and had to take 18 credit hours the first semester that I was playing football here. And at the end of the day, if you're going to do what's convenient for your sport, you're going to get caught in the dust and have to fight a lot harder than you should to graduate on time or graduate even a year late at that point.
And I think it's interesting, one of the comments on the question board was saying that is part of the academic, athletes not doing as well in school. Well, if you're in a major where you're not interested, then it's kind of like, well, I'm just here punching the clock, versus maybe a more difficult major. Yes, more difficult, it's harder work, but if I'm inspired by it, then I actually will perform because I'm actually interested. And I certainly think all of us would probably agree that if you're more interested in something, you'll study it with more passion.
I thought it was pretty interesting in that athlete major. That's a interesting idea there, and I think there may be some legs to it. I preach it all the time: the transferable skills that you get as a student athlete, and that's pretty much any student athlete, because you gotta be able to manage your time, the pressures that you have on you, not only from your teammates, your coaches, but your family, the community, fans. So you learn how to process information, be able to perform. The interpersonal skills that you got to have, working towards a goal, a collective goal of winning, and each puzzle piece is playing this part into that collective goal. All these things transfer into the business world and actually set student athletes up a little bit better than our counterparts that's not student athletes, because we do go through these real things that you experience in whatever business setting that you're in. So being able to couch that and have a curriculum that allows that flexibility to move through the skill set that you naturally obtain, whether that's in business, whether that's in hotel, retail, and sports management, whatever the degree is, having that focus on athletes and being amenable to their schedule, treating them like athletes so they can take care of their bodies, etc., because that's what they're here to do. I was with Dean Bruce, and one of the first meeting I had with him, he was coming just in from North Carolina. I mean, he literally has been here 3 months, and he said to me, like, we just gotta be real. Y'all here to be athletes, and we gotta set y'all up to be successful around athletes and supplement the student part for you guys to be successful in that part, and that's still true now. So maybe that athlete major is a something to explore. So whoever asked that question, good question.
It certainly was a great question, and I was reading it and responding to it as well. I think one of the things that is been put in place to help merge the two fields is the directors of player development. I believe that's what that position is, trying to align the two, without making it a course, without making it something that you can major in. It makes it a little bit more cohesive for both the athletic side and the academic side. But again, and as I responded to one of the questions, the course that I co-instruct in the hospitality retail sport management college professionalism seminar, again, teaches all those transferable skills, talking about resumes, how to interview, how to network, how to brand. All of these are transferable regardless of what field that you're going in, but it's probably even more effective for student athletes that have no clue. For the most part, the majority don't have a clue at how to be a business, how to be a brand in college, right? So even if, for example, they decided to pay players and give players contracts and all these other things, they have to understand what comes with it. That's the other side of the coin that we rarely talk about, is understanding once you start getting paid, there's a certain responsibility and certain certain way you have to conduct yourself at that point. I think it's Pandora's box if you open it, unless you're prepared to open it. I think if you teach athletes how to become a business and how to become a brand within this whole scheme of things, then everything else is null and void. The truth telling will help, explaining to them what the impact is and what the implications are. If I pay you, the responsibilities and the things that we're asking of you completely change. And so, again, we're discussing a slippery slope, but it's all in the truth telling, it's all in the preparation, it's all in the understanding. And if the two can ever merge, and that's obviously why we have a conflict now, is do we want to give the money away versus we keep all the money and have them continue to do what they're doing for little to nothing. So, again, we can go back and forth. It's a catch-22, but I'm a huge proponent, as I've always been, on preparation, teaching them, understanding, because regardless if you become a professional athlete or if you go to work at Walmart to be a manager or a retail store, you need transferable skills in being able to network and communicate effectively in society. That's why you're in school in the first place.
Mhm.
There's an interesting question here, and I'll pose this to all of you, but maybe Christian, you can start. That's talking about athletes who get Rhodes scholarships or academic scandals at UNC. So maybe start with you, Christian. How much do you, as an athlete, as a college athlete, are you aware of when there's a prominent player somewhere who does something incredibly academically oriented, or how much are you aware of a scandal of academic proportions at UNC or wherever else there might be? How much is that on your radar screen?
I mean, it comes up all the time. I mean, you consistently are compared to every other student athlete. Yeah, I mean, we talk all the time that you've got that Carolina logo on your book bag, and every time you walk around, they see the athletic department, or more specifically, they see you as a member of the football team. But ultimately, when we go out and about, I mean, we're all athletes. I mean, I'm compared just as much as I am to UNC. So when I have any sort of academic help, are you really getting that, or are you getting help to get you there? And so definitely something that you're always prepared to understand. And it's kind of I'm going to work hard so that I can prove myself before I get asked to prove myself. And yeah, I mean, it's just a consistent, I'm as legitimate as you think I am, but I'm going to prove this before the question even comes up.
Bo, how do you, when you were an athlete and you would hear about either academic successes or academic failures at other schools, would that get on your radar screen at all or become a point of discussion?
Yeah, absolutely. Dr. Rose was a great example of that, and how, this brilliant individual who was a first round draft pick, his junior year, and decides to go take the Rhodes Scholarship and goes to Oxford and comes back and end up being a later round pick and then ends up not being in the NFL very long because of the perception of his intellect. It's a couple of articles out there I would encourage folks to read, and I'm sure that y'all probably had him do it already, but just to hear his story of how coaches would talk to him differently than the other players. And he's just like, yo, I'm here playing football. Why are you having these conversations with me? Otherwise you would not have, because they didn't know how to approach him, which ended up shortening his career and him focusing on being a doctor at that point. You know, I had a very similar experience to that with my NFL aspirations. So I've been communicated to because one, I stood my ground on a few things at USC. I did push the envelope in different ways. And I've had multiple people come back to me and say, Mo, you were a threat to the shield, as they would call it, the NFL shield. We can deal with people who do domestic abuse, alcohol problem, you know, whatever you normally hear in the news. But someone who's articulate, who can stand up for themselves and is not afraid to push the envelope, well, that's a threat to our shield. We don't want those individuals who can communicate like that in the NFL. And so guys like myself, unless you're, you know, first round draft pick, even though you got talent, we're not even going to bring you in. And so those are things that you deal with and you are constantly aware of, because you want to know how you can best put yourself in position to be successful. And like Kristen said, the comparisons always happen. It never stops. So all that together is what you're always digesting.
It's interesting because, and I got to be careful how much I plug our own students, but we have a current doctoral student named Chris Core who's been studying recruiting. And some of what you were talking about, Mo, coaches not knowing how to deal with someone who's really, really bright or really, really intelligent because it doesn't fit the paradigm. Chris Core has found some interesting things regarding college recruiting about, well, we don't want them really, really super dumb because then they can't be eligible, but we also don't want them super, super smart because we want to be able to kind of do some of those things you guys talked about. Hey, go sit in this class, go sit in this major. And if you have a lot of give and take intellectually, you might start questioning the system rather than buying in totally to the system that's using you, so to speak.
Right.
We
Yeah.
talked earlier about the like missing some practice for class. I mean, there was a saying when I was playing, it was dumb smart guy. I mean, if you were sacrificing your athletics for school, you were considered a dumb smart guy because you were messing up your 2% opportunity to go play at the next level to better yourself for what was going to be more than likely what you were doing after college.
Yeah, and you know that I mean, again, you know, given our personal experiences here, I was the Gatorade Track and Field Athlete of the Year for South Carolina. You know, state champion in 110 hurdles, second in triple jump, and was top ranked, but I scratched out in long jump. But competed all across the nation. Got to South Carolina, and I wanted to run track as well as play football. And essentially, what I was told was that, Mo, you can run track, but you cannot miss one winter practice and excuse me, one winter workout, and you have to be at all the spring ball. So if I'm sitting there as a freshman who's competing against the likes of Kenny McKinley and Noah Whiteside and all these great receivers that we have here, and knowing that if I miss a practice, that it's going to be seen as bad and I want to ultimately play in the NFL, well, track and field was no longer an option for me. And so I never ran track here. And Coach Fry would be like, come on, Mo. I'm like, I can't. I got to make the best business decision for myself, and I couldn't be that dumb smart guy in the own way from a different direction.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we're almost out of time. I wanted to come back to you, Ellen, and ask, and it's always difficult to predict the future, but where are we going to be in 3 years with big time college athletes as employees? Is it going to be kind of the status quo? Do you see some things changing? And if you do see things changing, is that going to come from litigation, legislation, collective bargaining? What might cause the system to change if you think it will?
Yeah, you know, this is a tough question. Ever the optimist, I hope it's going to change. But then again, I've been in the game now for over 40 years. We haven't moved it very far along. Again, I didn't want to have to get depressed. You know, there are a couple of things that are happening right now. And the one seed that I will plant for all of you to consider, two things. Number one, the whole idea of amateurism should be an affront to anyone in this particular moment in time, especially in light of the racial awakening from last summer. You know, the idea of amateurism, the idea of it is that it is designed to exclude. That is what it is about. You know, it was initially to exclude racial minorities, members of the lower class. That's what it has been in sport from its beginning until now. No institution in higher education, if they say that they are committed to equity and to racial understanding, no institution in this country should be backing amateurism. So that would be a leverage to get us out of what we're talking about. But it's got to happen. The second thing is I do believe that we need a players association. I do believe that the players are capable of standing up. I believe that the players that they need to understand that they have more power, but they also need to have somebody blocking for them. And right now, you know, players are not members of the NCAA. The NCAA imposes things on them, and a players association that would block for them, I think, could be significant. And thank you for this opportunity.
Can I ask you one thing too? Have you looked at any of Cory Booker's legislation, Bill of Rights, for college students? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'll say that Senator Murphy has a bill right now as well. I favor Senator Murphy's bill much more than I do Senator Booker's. I understand what Senator Booker's office is trying to do, but I think there are too many compromises in it and too many things that actually undermine the purpose of what they're trying to achieve. And that's not a criticism of their office, because I know that they're coming at this with a good heart and with really trying to do something meaningful. But between the two bills, Senator Murphy's bill is the better bill in my view.
Okay.
Well, I want to thank the panel. We're just about out of time. I want to, since I plugged in before, Chris Core just sent me a note. And I think this says a lot about where we are, given that it's supposed to be educational. And he says that there were a number of schools that did not actively recruit Trevor Lawrence because both of his parents have a master's degree and they were asking very detailed and articulate questions. And that actually turned off some recruiters. So I think that says a lot about, if it's really about academics, or that's supposed to be the primary thing, if we're not recruiting the player that would turn out to be one of the best quarterback prospects ever because he's too potentially smart, you know, that says a lot about where we're at. And I think it also goes back to our original question, which is what we're doing really in big time sport really about an employment situation, but we're not allowing it to be an employment situation. So I want to thank all of our panelists. I want to thank everybody for attending. We're just about out of time. Thank you for coming to CSRI. Thank you again, Kim Boone, for all the work that you did to make this possible. I know we have a couple of more panel presentations coming up, and I look forward to seeing everybody in person for CSRI 2022, as hopefully we get back to some normalcy this summer. Thank you all.
Thank you.